on this important webinar, which focuses on the particularly vulnerable tribes of India, the PVTGs as they are known. And but generally today, the webinar, we would like our panelists to share their guidance as to how the future of ethnographic studies, field studies should be, particularly in the context of the COVID-19 scenario that has been presented to us today. Today on chair we have Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, who is the academic and the executive head member secretary IGNCA, who would be chairing this session. I welcome you, sir. I also welcome all my panelists today who are renowned scholars in their field and who have actually mentored a whole generation of anthropologists in our country. I welcome Professor P.C. Joshi, who is currently the head of the Anthropology Department, University of Delhi. I take this opportunity also to welcome Professor S.M. Patnaik, who is the Vice Chancellor of Utkal University, Odisha. I welcome Shri Ranendra Kumar, Director, Tribal Research Institute, and Professor Emeritus Vijay S. Sahai of the Ranchi University. Just a few lines about this webinar and the project under which this webinar is being conducted. Before I come to the detailed introduction of my panelists, though I know that participants who are from this field of anthropology, ethnography, and cultural studies and cultural heritage of India actually need no introduction of this distinguished panel and our panelists today. I would like to inform that this webinar is linked with an ongoing project of the Janpad Sampada Division of the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, and particularly vulnerable tribes and cultural dimensions of development. In its first phase, a pilot study has been initiated on the Asurs and the Birjia communities of Jharkhand. The project is being carried out in collaboration with the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. And I really thank both my member secretary and the Tribal Affairs Ministry of giving us this opportunity to carry out this project, this very important project, and have been the guiding light behind this entire program and the project as well. It is well recognized today that cultural parameters are crucial towards achieving the goals of sustainable growth. However, we continue to grapple with strategies that need to be put in place to draw both the community and its cultural resources into development programs and use them as a basic framework for developing our models and framing our policies. Such strategies imply a very close interaction with the community and a field-based approach. COVID-19 has changed the nature of human interaction. How do we envisage future field-based engagements, interactions, data collection in the face of this challenge posed by the new scenario? Let us not forget that isolated tribal populations are highly vulnerable to outside interventions and infections being brought in by the outsiders, against which they neither have a natural immunity and nor are there adequate health systems in place. The disaster management studies, as we know, seldom take into account the impact of disasters, natural disasters, or man-made disasters on intangible cultural heritage. And we know it well that in the traditional knowledge systems, wisdom traditions, technological skills, traditional technological skills, and craft practices are all in the realm of the intangible. They are neither written nor documented as manuals, but passed on through direct face-to-face interaction from one generation to another. There is an urgent need to safeguard them and integrate them into modern-day developmental policies through a community-based and a community-led approach. The important question that arises is how to achieve such goals, what approach, framework, or methodology to follow, Where is the entry point and how to obtain community consent and above all access to the community and its cultural resource base? A sound roadmap is needed to address these challenges and develop new approaches and new ways of doing things. In our context, new approach to field studies, ethnography, and applied developmental anthropology. The present webinar hopes to discuss these issues both in broader sense and in reference to COVID-19 and its impact. As I've already stated, that we have a panel of very distinguished senior and experienced scholars who have been actually tackling these issues in their various writings, researches conducted not only in India but across the globe. Among us today, we have Professor P.C. Joshi, one of the most senior scholars in the field of anthropology and ethnography. Professor P.C. Joshi is currently the head of the Department of Anthropology in Delhi University. He is a recipient of several awards and honors, including Indira Priyadarshini Vrikshamitra National Award as Friends of Trees founder member and the Inter-University Center Associateship Award in Humanities and Social Sciences. He is also the task force member, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. He is currently the president of the Society for Indian Medical Anthropology, executive member of the Ethnographic Folk Culture Society. He has written extensively on medical anthropology, traditional medicine, shamanism, impact of disaster, lifestyle diseases, and antibiotic resistance. So you can see that he is the most appropriate of the scholars to direct us today towards how the future looks and how to handle that future. He's indeed been a mentor to a whole generation of scholars in the field of anthropology and ethnography. His publications include, and he has written extensively, but some of the publications that I have here is the Tribal Health in Medicine, Exploration in Indian Medical Anthropology, Risk Factors for Mortality and Injury, Post-Tsunami Epidemiological Findings from Tamil Nadu. Sir, it is my great privilege and honor to have you today on this panel, and my heartfelt gratitude to you for having so kindly accepted to be with us today. Thank you, sir, and welcome you once again. I would like to welcome Professor S.M. Patnaik, currently the Vice Chancellor of Utkal University, Odisha. He himself is from Odisha, and he's returned to Odisha after 36 years and has brought transformative changes in Utkal University. He is the visiting professor at University of California, has been an advisor to Government of Nagaland on sustainable tourism development policy, is the co-founder of Anthropology Beyond Borders, an academic body committed to interdisciplinary research in 4 countries, India, South Africa, Brazil, and United States. He has worked extensively in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Eastern and Central India, South Africa, Brazil, and United States. He is the president of Indian Anthropological Association, vice president, International Union of Anthropological Sciences. His publications, he has written 44 books and 40 research papers. His publications include Culture, Identity and Development, Displacement, Rehabilitation and Social Change, The Case of the Faraja Highway, Indian Tribes and the Mainstream. I welcome you, Professor Patnaik, today, and again my heartful gratitude to you for kindly having accepted our invitation to be on the panel today. I also Shri Ranendra Kumar. He is IAS 2006 at Jharkhand Cadre, Director of Ramdayal Munda Tribal Welfare Research Institute, Jharkhand. He has also been appointed as Secretary Jharkhand Public Service Commission at Government of Jharkhand. He has been actively involved in tribal studies, particularly in Jharkhand. He has written several books on tribal communities. His most famous book is Devta, dedicated to the present situation of Asur tribe, PVTG. He's written another book, Gayab Hota Desh, again on the tribal life. Uh, his books revolve around mining activities among the tribal areas and its impact on the tribal community. I welcome you, Shri Ranendra Kumar ji, and thank you very much for agreeing to be on our panel today. I extend a very warm welcome to you, sir. I would like to welcome Professor Emeritus Vijay S. Sahai, formerly Head Department of Anthropology, University of Allahabad. He taught in Ranchi for 15 years, then joined the University of Allahabad in 1993. Based upon 13 months of fieldwork, his latest book, Experiencing Anthropology in the Nicobar Archipelago, has been published by Routledge and a much talked and discussed publication. I welcome you, sir, and I again express my heartfelt gratitude to you for having kindly given your consent to be on this panel today. To chair this webinar among us today is present the member secretary of IGNCA, who's also the executive and academic head of the IGNCA. A prolific writer, poet, theater activist, playwright, historian, and mass communication scholar, he has been the guiding light of the academic vision of the center. He was the founder, vice chancellor of the Kushabao Thakre University of Journalism and Communication, Raipur, where he served in this capacity for 10 years, that is for 2 terms. This is a rare feat for a vice chancellor. He has written extensively on media, communication, history, education policies, culture, and other relevant issues. He has several short story collections to his credit and poetry books, including Sachinandan की लोकप्रिय कहानियां, कुछ अल्प विराम, पल भर की पहचान, and his latest book of poems, यूं ही साथ साथ चलते, penned by him and his equally accomplished wife, Srimati Malvika Joshi. I welcome you, sir, and I express my gratitude, heartfelt gratitude to you that despite your busy schedule, and I know that you before this you've been already on the two webinars that have been happening on the IGNCA platform. Welcome you, sir, and with your permission, kindly take the chair. And with your permission, I would now like to invite Professor Vijay, Emeritus Vijay S. Sahai, Ranchi University, to kindly enlighten us with his address. Thank you, sir, and welcome once again to all.
Thank you.
सॉरी बीच में आपको थोड़ा सा इंटरप्ट कर रहा हूँ. साय सर से रिक्वेस्ट है कि वो एक विंडो ओपन करें. एक्चुअली गलती से शायद कई सारी विंडो ओपन हो गई हैं, जिससे वो थोड़ा सा उसका लुक एकदम बिगड़ गया है. कई 5-6 विंडोज ओपन है विजय शाह सर के आईडी से, तो वो जिस पर प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे हैं उस पर ही रहें. बाकी यदि म्यूट कर लेंगे तो ठीक रहेगा सर. थैंक यू.
हो जाएगा. Should I start?
Yes, sir. Please.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. As a matter of fact, just a minute, I'm not very efficient on this computer technology. I have someone who is assisting me. I have to take his help also.
Sure, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, my first slide, please. Okay, see, The theme of this webinar is particularly vulnerable communities, intangible cultural heritage, and sustainable developments. There are two things, Well, at the very outset, let me tell you, I'm an anthropologist. I'm very much pessimistic about the future of what we are going to discuss. Why I'm so pessimistic? Initially, I feel pessimistic because what have we done so far except intellectual exercises? Three of the anthropologists are here, Professor Patnaik, Professor Joshi, and myself here. Well, you see, during the entire our career of more than decades now, we must have attended such seminars more than 50 times or even more than half a century times. And in every seminar, certain resolutions are made. Certain resolutions are made and that is submitted to the financial institutions or the government of India. But what has been the result so far? I find it is the desired results have never been achieved. This makes me a little pessimistic. Even then, when we, just a few minutes before, Madam was talking about that how this COVID situation and how to collect the data. Of course, then I was reminded of the Second World War when the national character studies, I think my colleagues in anthropology, they must be knowing that a new methodology was developed, that is study of culture at a distance. Study of culture at a distance. That reminds me, and perhaps the anthropologist may be able to devise some method that even such circumstances, not only COVID, which is which prevents the anthropologist to go to the field and have in-depth studies. Because, for example, I studied among the Nicobaris for 13 months. That was a very long period of stay for my PhD. Now nobody can go because of the COVID. And besides COVID, there is also one problem with the primitive tribal groups particularly, and that is the extremism. All the places which are inhabited by the primitive tribal groups, mostly in India, they have become the dens of extremism. This is also one of the great problems that we have to think of, because no anthropologist would like to take the risk of his life and stay for such a long period. Even in Jharkhand also, I'm born and brought up in Jharkhand. Still, I did not very interior. Such circumstances. Hello, am I audible?
There is little interruption. Yeah, your audio is not very clear. In between, there are interruptions, sir.
There are some net problem. I'm sorry because I'm not an expert on these things. For the first time, I have been participating in any webinar.
No, sir, please don't worry, because these are technical issues and human beings don't have control over them. Sir.
Yes. Slide. Next. This was there. No. How much? ये क्यों आता है भाई? 14 suggestions inside. Okay. So what I want to say that, as a matter of fact, we have very little knowledge. Only some, folklores arts and crafts, dance, music, traditional medicines, etc. Um, has there ever been, my question is, has there ever been any plant documentation of a large number of communities? I think not. I'll give some examples. I'll give some examples also. Now, to understand, there is some problem with my...
No, sir, you are clearly audible and your screen is also visible.
See. Just a minute. See, I'm sorry. Anyway, see, in the background you find a hill here. Now, see that how devils of traits elements are often interwoven. Yes, tangible and intangible traits or elements of any culture is how it is interwoven. That I want to give you examples from some of my own works in the Nicobar archipelago. Now, the first one is, now this is known as Tahop, Tahop. Tahop means devil's abode. Tahop is, island of Chowra is a very small island, 2.8 square kilometer, but the Chowra island itself is considered to be the land of wizard. All the Nicobarese of other islands, they consider the entire island of Chowra as sacred. They think that every Chowrian is a wizard. And this, in Chowra Island, this hilltop, this 300 feet approximately the height of this cliff is, it is in Chowra, it is known as Tahop, that means devil's abode. Now, these are some intangible cultural heritages, which for thousands and thousands of years in the Nicobar archipelago, people have it in their mind. Now, these things, whether such things of have been, well, I have done my research. My book is also coming by the Routledge, Experiencing Anthropology in the Nicobar Islands. I've written in detail about all these things. But I think that there are a number of communities which have not been properly studied, in-depth studies. Second, now this is a sea beach, Hiva it is called, again in Chowra Island. Now, this place is held sacred, very sacred, by the people of Chowra, because they understand that their first ancestors came here and they planted the first coconut tree here. I told you, once again, I remind you that Chowra is one of the most small islands in the whole of Nicobar archipelago. Its size is only 2.8 square kilometer with the thickest density of population, but the land itself is considered as the land of wizard, and every Chowrian is supposed to be the wizard. This is all in elements of the intangible cultural heritage. See, this spot which you are seeing here, this spot is very significant in the life of the entire whole Nicobar, the 12 islands in the Nicobar group. Every family has to keep this pot. Why? Because these pots are made by the Chowarians who are supposed to be wizards. This pot is very simple earthen pot, but not made by wheel pottery. It is made by hands only, But it is believed that if the meals are cooked in such Chowra pots, it is the harbinger of fortune, number one. Number two, if the water is boiled in Chowra pot, and if a child is bathed in such a water, then the child will be always immunized against any effect of the black magic. Now, these are the intangible cultural heritages, Very sad that this has now absolutely become now defunct, which I'll be discussing at the end of my... See, Chowra pot, clay for making Chowra pot is not available in Chowra. People have to go to 14 nautical miles to a different island, Teresa. From there, they bring the clay. And that is also something I have explained in my book very, very extensively, that how they become silent because they believe that if they make any sound from where they collect the clay, then the devil of that place will become angry and that will come to Chowra and cause death and disease. So great difficulty. One Chowra pot making is a very, very difficult task. See, fire receptacle is there. One Chowra pot is being baked. So each Chowra pot has to be baked separately. Now, you see, some क्या बीच में चला रहा है, इसको नहीं हट सकता है. Some tangible cultural that I wanted to show from the above examples that such things are very much there, which are intangible cultural heritages that is only possible to be known by in-depth studies, ethnographic or anthropological studies. I'm worried that I think how many studies have such as have been done, I don't know. Anyway, some tangible cultural examples I'm again giving from the Nicobar archipelago. See, these are called karyavas, karyavas. This is to be kept in every house, karyavas. During the time of ancestor worship, they represent the ancestors. They are worshipped very much. And a big feast is organized during the Oswari feast. And these are, some rituals are offered to this. Now, this is a scare devil, Every house, just at the entrance of the house, such scare devils are put there just so that to frighten away the spirits, bad spirit or malevolent spirits. They will be frightened. For that they keep these in every Nicobari house. It used to be. Now, of course, after the introduction of Christianity, there has been a lot of changes. Such karyavas are there. These are the examples of the tangible. Now, this is also a karyava, just looking at the entrance of the hut, so that no evil spirit can enter for fear of such karyavas. This is, again, tangible and intangible example of cultural heritage among the people. However, what is this particularly? Because, what is this? ये क्यों रुक रहा है यहाँ पर? यहाँ पर दिखाई नहीं देता. However, there are. Okay. Now, I give you some examples which are absolutely intangible. For example, family friendship bonds in the Nicobar archipelago. There is no market system. People just, we anthropologists know very much Kula exchange of Malinowski's, Trobriand Arendt, Professor Patnaik and Professor Joshi, they are all aware of it, Once in Kula, always in Kula. Malinowski has also written also. Now, the same type of family friendship bonds is developed by people from one island to another, and that is maintained through the generations. Such family friendship bonds are there because there is no open market system there. They do inter-island exchange. Whatever their indigenous products are there, they exchange with one island, exchanges with another island. But there is no market system. So they go only to their family friends, which is maintained from the generations, and with them only they exchange. So this family friendship bond is also one of the beautiful examples of intangible cultural heritage. Likewise, the ancient songs of Nangori. Ancient songs. These ancient songs are sung only during the reburial festival. Reburial. Once a man dies, then he is buried. But then again, his bones are dug from the grave, and the reburial ceremony takes place, which continues for months. The festive occasion continues for months together. But during that period, only these ancient songs, which I have recorded, but unfortunately lost it. I remember that the former director of Doordarshan and Akashwani, both, one N. Iqbal Singh was there. He had recorded my all tape records, but then for years I kept it, and now it is lost. And I don't suppose that now there would be anybody alive now who knows this ancient song, because during 46 years back, when I was working there in the Nicobar Islands, I worked there from 74, 75 first. So that time I had collected those songs, and only 9 people were there who remembered these songs. They must have died it now, because in 2007, after 28 years, when I went there, I didn't find anybody alive. I tried to know about the ancient songs, but nobody knew about all these things. So such things are fast vanishing. It's a question of now or never. So such tangible or intangible cultural heritages have to be documented. Then dialect of an uninhabited island is not looks to be a little bit strange, paradoxical, that an island where nobody lives, but it has its own dialect. it appears to be very paradoxical, but it is true in Nicobar archipelago. I have written in great detail in my book. There is an island Tilan Chong, which is uninhabited. But people from Nancowry group of islands, they annually once only go there. The moment they reach the island, they become silent. They don't speak in their dialect, and they have invented for thousands of years in a dialect which is only to be spoken in Telenchong. Because if they speak in their own dialect, the spirits living in Telenchong will know that where from they have come, and that spirit will come to their island and cause death and diseases. For this reason, so such dialect of such things are there in Nicobar archipelago. I don't know whether anybody knows, because in 2007, when I went there again, I tried to collect some vocabulary. Only one person was alive who could tell me some of which I have included in my book, also forthcoming. Well, family friendship bond, I have already told you. Now, these journeys, which I find is by canoes, primitive canoes. Now this has become absolutely out of date. But 46 years back, when I was walking there, people used to go to their family friends by making voyages on such canoes. The sails were there, and this is just activities before going to any other island. They are putting their own things, and they start and meet their friends. All set sail for the exchange of traditional exchange of with their family friends. Now, see, these coconuts, the heap of coconut that you see here, they have been brought from different islands, from their different family friends only. Not they have purchased, but their friends have gifted them. They have been brought here, and they will be distributing, among themselves. In Chaura, because in Chaura, a small island, they don't have food stuff is not full available. So men have to go out to the different islands and walk there and then bring these things, This is how the distribution of things are. After they return from there, then their canoe, they are just bringing out of the water and put it on dry dock, you can say. See, before they go voyage in such a way, canoe race is also there. That is a pastime. But what is important in this, from intangible point of view, what is important in canoe race is there's no competition at all. Anybody can go on, sit down there, and no loser and no winner, They just come and they enjoy it. But then this is a very, very common pastime there. Now, what I find that development of a group versus preservation of criteria. Now, this issue I would particularly like to discuss with my anthropology colleagues, because on the one hand, whether we want preservation or we want documentation, that is the problem, because preservation is one thing, and documentation is another. See, could the development and the status quo of tribal culture, see, for last more than 40 years, I've almost worked with the students of the postgraduate department of Allahabad University as well as Ranchi University also, in almost all the parts of the country, right from Rajasthan to Meghalaya and Arunachal Pradesh, and in south from Karnataka to Bastar and all. What I have found that people, on the one hand, even anthropologists also, on the one hand, they say that no development has been taking place, no development. And if any developmental project or scheme is launched, then most of the times the leadership, local leadership, and sometimes aided by some intellectuals and anthropologists also, that no, this plan will change their tribal culture. So this will change the tribal culture. This has to be preserved. Now, these two things cannot run together because here comes the role of technology, because if you want any development, you have to do it through the technology. The moment you introduce any technology, it will very much affect the tangible as well as intangible culture of the people. So on the one hand, you want development. On the other hand, you want preservation of tangible or intangible culture. These two things cannot go simultaneously, cannot run together, because if you introduce, then there will be change. You have to accept the change. Now, whether it only anthropologists or the planners can do that. They could give a positive direction to the change, not negative. So I want this debate in the coming times with anthropologists, that how, if the technology, any technology is introduced, it will bring subsequent change in the social structure as well as in the belief system of the people also. I think these two things cannot go together. Now, for example, question that needs to be answered. I give you some examples. How? Could the Birhor Chotanagpur survive on rope making? Rope making was the traditional, you can say, profession of the Birhor tribe, who are supposed to be the hunting and gathering. The moment the nylon, these ropes were introduced, thereafter nobody ever purchases their ropes made of some barks of the trees, so they cannot provide. Now this heritage, this tangible cultural heritage will die out, it's a natural death, so could the Birhor of Chotanagpur survive on rope making? No, they cannot. So we should not be worried about it, that no, we have to preserve their rope making technique, which is very traditional. These things I have heard from anthropologists also. That's why I'm raising this question. Why did the age-old institution of interallied trade in the Nicobar archipelago came to an end? I tell you in my book, which is coming very soon, and several articles also have written on it. Anthropologists are, at least some of the anthropologists are aware of it, that just like the Kula exchange, except Moali and Saulawa, which is involved in Kula, same type of exchange, institutional, thousands and thousands of years of traditional exchange was running in Nicobar archipelago. Now it has completely stopped. Why? This needs to be answered. Then why Chowra pot? Chowra pot, which was supposed to be one of the most essential cultural items of the Nicobar archipelago. Every Nicobarese had to keep it in their houses, Now the making of Chowra pot has completely stopped. I put a question mark before the anthropologist particularly. Why? Well, the answer of all such questions lies in technology, which I have earlier also said. The moment we introduced it, yes, I'm completing. This is my final. Just a minute. Just hardly 1 minute. So this is because of technology, Well, viewers, I'm sorry, because the time constraints are always there in webinar. So viewers are suggested to comment, if any. They may criticize also. My email ID is so and so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I also really regret that we have such limited time, but you have raised some very, very pertinent questions. And I am sure that the other speakers would continue in the in the same light, and role of interdisciplinary and interactions between different fields of knowledge probably cannot be overemphasized while listening to you, sir. Thank you very much. And now can I invite Shri Ranendra Kumar, Director, Tribal Research Institute, Ranchi, to kindly address us and share your valuable work.
नमस्कार सबों को।
नमस्कार।
ये जो शोध कार्य होना है मुख्य रूप से असुर और ब्रिजिया पीवीटीजी ग्रुप पर होना है। ये मेरे लिए थोड़ा सा सकारात्मक है कि मैं 95 से 98 तक 3 साल उनके बीच में काम किया। तो मानव शास्त्र के किताबी ज्ञान से तो मैं परिचित नहीं हूँ, लेकिन इन दोनों समुदायों के ऐसे मेरा जो फील्ड का यहाँ अनुभव रहा है, उसमें मैंने बिरहोर लोगों के साथ काम किया 92 से लेके 95 तक। फिर ये रांची के अनगढ़ा प्रखंड के पहाड़ सिंह में, फिर 95 से 98 तक जिस प्रखंड में मेरी पोस्टिंग थी, मैं 98 बैच का पीसीएस हूँ, 2006 बैच का आईएएस हूँ। तो 95 से 98 तक मेरी जो पोस्टिंग थी वो गुमला जिले के बिशनपुर प्रखंड में थी, जहाँ अगर पीवीटी जी को देखें तो वहाँ असुर थे, रिजिया थे, बिरहोर थे, परहिया थे, 4 पीवीटी जी वहाँ थे, बगल में कोरबा थे। लगभग 5 वहाँ इस पीवीटी जी ग्रुप के लोग थे और मैं 3 साल तक उनके बीच में काम किया। मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ ट्राइबल अफेयर्स के साइट पे जो असुर लोगों पे एक वीडियो है 23-24 मिनट का, उसमें जो आलू की खेती का जो वो सारा कुछ दृश्य है, वो मेरे समय का है और मैं ही उसमें कम्युनिटी के साथ बात करता हुआ दिख रहा हूँ। कुछ बातें जो अभी सर ने उठाई हैं, उस संदर्भ में कुछ बातें स्पष्ट करना चाहूंगा कि एक तो अंडमान निकोबार का जो दृश्य है, अंडमान निकोबार में जो हमारे ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स हैं, उनसे बड़ा भिन्न है परिदृश्य झारखंड का। झारखंड का क्या, छत्तीसगढ़ का भी, उड़ीसा का भी। कोई उग्रवादी या आतंकवादी कोई गतिविधियां उस इलाके में नहीं है, पहले तो ये स्पष्ट हो जाना चाहिए। दूसरी बात कि जिसको आप संस्कृति कह रहे हैं, वो संस्कृति खास करके पीवीटी जी के ग्रुप के संदर्भ में, एक तो उनके सारी कम्युनिटी की एक साथ जो गतिविधियां हैं, चाहे वो सांस्कृतिक हो, धार्मिक हो और सामाजिक हो और आर्थिक भी, तो वो चूंकि वो एक ग्रुप एक्टिविटी है और उस ग्रुप एक्टिविटी को हम अभी तक अगर वो डेवलप भी कर गए हैं तो अभी भी कोई व्यक्तिवादी वो नहीं हो गए। मान लीजिए कि मुंडा और संथाल हो और खड़िया और ऐसी 5-6 जातियां जहाँ मिडिल क्लास डेवलप कर गई है, जहाँ आईएएस और आईपीएस हो गए हैं, डिप्टी कलेक्टर्स हैं, कॉलेज टीचर्स हैं, तो उन्होंने प्रकृति के साथ अपने संबंधों को नहीं बदला है। उनके जो सांस्कृतिक और धार्मिक जो संबंध हैं प्रकृति और समुदाय के साथ, उनको उन्होंने बदला है। वो अपने गीत को, अपने पर्व त्योहार के सारी विधि को, अपने मांदर बजाने के अपनी कला को उन्होंने नहीं बदला है। कुछ यही बात कही जा सकती है उन पीवीटी जी ग्रुप के असुर ब्रिजिया लोगों के संदर्भ में भी, जिस पर हम बात को फोकस करना चाहेंगे। ठीक है कि उनकी बसावट इतनी कठिन है, खास करके असुर लोगों की बसावट जो है वो पहाड़ के ऊपर, इसको पाट क्षेत्र कहते हैं, नेत्रहाट के आसपास के इलाके में, और वहां है उनकी बसावट। 2001 में उनकी आबादी 10,347 थी, 10,347 थी। 2011 में उनकी आबादी 22,459 है। तो आबादी भी बढ़ी है, लेकिन स्वाभाविक है कि जो उनकी अपनी व्यवसाय के जो अपने तरीके थे, आयरन मेल्टिंग ग्रुप था वो। असुर, जो वीर असुर, जो जंगल के असुर थे, उनके 3 उपजातियां हैं। एक तो ब्रिजिया भी जो उनकी उपजाति है, अगरिया है वो भी उनकी उपजाति है, जो बगल में छत्तीसगढ़ में अगरिया है और मध्य प्रदेश में लोहा पिघलाने में उनकी भी कोई सानी नहीं था। तो ये लोहा पिघलाने का जो उनका ट्रेडिशनल ऑक्यूपेशन था, व्यवसाय था, स्वाभाविक तौर पे उसको ठेस लगा है, और ये ठेस आज नहीं लगा है, ये 30 साल पहले ही लग चुका था। और वो चूंकि वो प्रॉफिटेबल नहीं रहा, टाटा की कुदाल और टाटा की खुरपियां पहुंच गई सुदूर हाटों में, तो उनके जो मैनुअल जो जिस लोहे को पिघलाते थे, मिट्टी का वो बनाकर, क्या कहेंगे उसको, तो उसमें चारकोल और भट्टी एक मिट्टी का बनाकर, और उसमें चारकोल और आयरन ओर को डालकर और रात भर वो चलाकर सवेर में सूर्यास्त में शुरू करते थे, और सूर्योदय में वो लोहा पिघल के निकलता हुआ, उधर सूर्य निकल रहा है, इधर पिघला हुआ लोहा निकल रहा है। बड़ा ही आकर्षक वो दृश्य है, बहुत सौंदर्य के दृष्टिकोण से बड़ी खूबसूरत क्षण होता था जब वो पिघल कर वो लोहा निकलता था। लेकिन वो जो उसमें मैन पावर लगता था, जितनी उसमें मेहनत लगती थी, उसका कॉस्ट नहीं मिल पा रहा था। इस कारण से धीरे धीरे वो चीजें खत्म हो गई, जो अभी सहाय सर ने भी कुछ अंडमान के संदर्भ में जो बातें कही। लेकिन इसका अर्थ ये नहीं है कि वो सब कुछ खत्म हो गया है। खेती के साधन बढ़े हैं, पहले मक्का और सरगुजा की खेती करते थे, अब आलू की भी खेती कर रहे हैं। लेकिन दूसरा जो सबसे बड़ा खतरा है, वो है वहां बॉक्साइट की माइंस का होना। बॉक्साइट की माइनिंग ने धीरे धीरे वो फैलती जा रही है, और ओपन कास्ट माइनिंग ही है वहां पे, वो सबसे बड़ा दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। वो सबसे बड़ी चोट पहुंचा रहा है पहले से भी, आज भी, न केवल उनके भौतिक जीवन को बल्कि उनके आध्यात्मिक और सांस्कृतिक जीवन को। तो ये सबसे बड़ी समस्या है। लेकिन कुछ योजनाएं जो हमारी झारखंड सरकार की हैं, उसने एक दूसरे ढंग का मौका भी उनको दिया है। एक तो सबसे सुखद योजना है वो डाकिया योजना। उसमें 35 किलो अनाज उनके दरवाजे पे प्रतिमाह पहुंचता है। तो वो गैर कृषि दिनों में मजदूरी करने जाना ही जाना है, या अनाज के बदले में कुछ गेठी कंदा और कुछ कंदा जंगल से चुन के खाना है, वो समस्या खत्म हो गई है। अनाज उनके पास है, चाहे वो बिरहोर हो, बिरिजिया हो, महाल पहाड़िया हो, सौरिया पहाड़िया हो, सबर हो, असुर हो, कोई भी हो, ये 35 किलो अनाज वहां पहुंच रहा है। दूसरा कि 1,000 रुपया प्रतिमाह उस परिवार की महिला के नाम से एक पेंशन योजना जा रही है, 1,000 रुपया प्रतिमाह। ये एक बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है। वो एक कैश उनके हाथ में, महिला के हाथ में, कोई गृहस्थी महिला ही संभालती है, वो उसके हाथ में जा रहा है। तीसरी योजना जो है वो बिरसा आवास योजना करके है। वो 1,32,000 रुपया उनके पक्के मकान के लिए, खास करके जो माल पहाड़िया जो पहाड़ के ऊपर रहते हैं, या असुर और कोरबा लोगों के लिए तो थोड़ा सा वहां घर बनाना कठिन है। तो वो और इंदिरा आवास योजना से बहुत ज्यादा का कॉस्टिंग वहां है, और एक अच्छा खासा घर वहां बनने की प्रक्रिया में। हमारी सरकार ने यहाँ एक बड़ा प्रयोग किया कि इनके लिए एक अलग बटालियन बनाया, पीवीटीजी ग्रुप के लिए एक अलग बटालियन ही बनाया है। उसमें असुर जनजाति के, बिरहोर आदिम जनजाति के और पहाड़िया बड़ी संख्या में युवाओं को, मैं तो केवल बिशुनपुर के इलाके के हमारे जो संपर्क में जो बच्चे हैं, तो मुझे लग रहा है कि 25-30 जो युवा हैं, 30 के लगभग, एक हमारे प्रखंड से ही असुर युवाओं को उस बटालियन में एज ए कांस्टेबल नौकरी मिली है। उसके अलावा एक योजना है कि आप अगर ग्रेजुएट हैं तो सीधे आपको आपकी नौकरी तृतीय वर्गीय जो है आपको मिलेगी। और उसके अलावा जो सारी नौकरियों में जो आरक्षण है शेड्यूल्ड ट्राइब ग्रुप के लिए, उसमें 3% का हॉरिजॉन्टल आरक्षण पीवीटीजी ग्रुप के लिए किया गया है। इस बार एक डिप्टी कलेक्टर में पीवीटीजी ग्रुप की एक लड़की पीसीएस करके आई है। मुझे लग रहा है कि पूरे 75 पीवीटीजी ग्रुप में पहली युवा लड़की होगी जो एज ए डिप्टी कलेक्टर आज आई है, और मेरे जैसा 20 साल के बाद एज ए आईएएस वो नौकरी करेगी इस झारखंड के एरिया में। और सबसे खूबसूरत बात है कि जो हमारे वेलफेयर के जो आवासीय विद्यालय हैं, उसके रिजल्ट पिछले 3-4 साल में अद्भुत तरह से बढ़े हैं। 90% मैथ और फिजिक्स में वो आवासीय विद्यालय के बच्चे ला रहे हैं। उन आवासीय विद्यालयों में कुछ तो स्कूल सीधे सीधे पीवीटीजी के लिए ही आरक्षित है, 9 ऐसे जो है जिसमें केवल पीवीटीजी के ही बच्चे पढ़ते हैं। बाकी जो आवासीय विद्यालय है उस इलाके में, जैसे बिशुनपुर में चौरापाट में भी है, जोहीपाट में भी है, वो 4-5 वहाँ आवासीय विद्यालय हैं, उनमें वो रिजर्व किया गया है कि यहाँ इतने सीट कम से कम पीवीटीजी बच्चों के लिए होगा ही होगा। तो ये एक महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका। मैं जब 95 में था तो उस समय मैंने अपने उपन्यास में, एक मेरे मित्र थे रुंझुन असुर, वो संस्कृत में ऑनर्स थे, क्योंकि उनके पिता टीचर थे, दूसरी पीढ़ी के लोग थे, उन्होंने संस्कृत में ऑनर्स किया था। एक जोहीपाट के मित्र थे, वो आवासीय विद्यालय के ही हेड मास्टर हुआ करते थे, और हमारे ब्लॉक कैंपस के स्कूल में जो टीचर थे वो बिरहोर और असुर ही टीचर हुआ करते थे। ये पहली पीढ़ी में एज ए टीचर बन के आने का आप आवासीय विद्यालय से करते हैं मैट्रिकुलेशन और +2 की डिग्री लेते हैं, और एज ए प्राइमरी स्कूल के टीचर के तौर पे आते हैं, और फिर दूसरी पीढ़ी के लोग जो है अन्य नौकरियों में जाते हैं। तो आप मिडिल क्लास में आ रहे हैं, इससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि आपका कल्चर चेंज कर रहा है। ठीक है कि आपने प्रोडक्शन सिस्टम चेंज कर लिया, लेकिन आपके जो सिंगबोंगा है वो सिंगबोंगा है, आपके जो पर्व त्योहार है वो पर्व त्योहार है, आपकी जो कम्युनिटी फीलिंग है कल्चरली, रिलीजियसली, स्पिरिचुअली वो है, और आपके खान पान में कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, खान पान वही रहता है। तो संस्कृति का एक हिस्सा जो कम्युनिटी का फीलिंग के साथ कम्युनिटी एक साथ रहती है वो बची रहती है, और परिवर्तन तो आना अनिवार्य है, क्योंकि उसको पौष्टिक आहार चाहिए, उसको भी गुणवत्तापूर्ण शिक्षा चाहिए, उसको भी चिकित्सा के हर मानक चाहिए। वो कोई प्रिजर्व करके म्यूजियम में रखने वाली चीज नहीं है। अंडमान निकोबार के इंडेक्सेज अलग हो सकते हैं, सहाय सर के अनुभव अलग हो सकते हैं और अंडमान निकोबार के लिए अलग होना भी चाहिए, लेकिन हमारे जो पिवट ग्रुप है उनको उनके कल्चर के साथ, उनके सांस्कृतिक मूल्यों के साथ कैसे वो सारे गुणवत्तापूर्ण एक लाइफ विद डिग्निटी है, गरिमापूर्ण जीवन जीने का उनको हक है, क्योंकि बी द पीपल ऑफ इंडिया के वो भी इंटीग्रल पार्ट है। तो उस म्यूजियम के नाम पे या उनको संरक्षित रखना है, इसलिए उनको हम पौष्टिक आहार से वंचित करें, चिकित्सा से वंचित करें, एजुकेशन से वंचित करें, वो नहीं हो सकता है। वो मिलना चाहिए, मिलेगा तो इंटरेक्शन होगा तो कुछ कमियां आएंगी, कुछ अच्छाइयां आएंगी, लेकिन जब तक कम्युनिटी है, जब तक कम्युनिटी फीलिंग है, जब तक नेचर के साथ उनका स्पिरिचुअल रिलेशनशिप है और सांस्कृतिक मूल्य और सामाजिक मूल्य नहीं बदलते हैं, तब तक वो कम्युनिटी सर्वाइव करेगी और हमारे लिए गर्व की विषय रहेगी। थैंक यू। मैं फिर अगले और लोग बोल लेंगे तो कुछ अगर जरूरी होगा तो मैं बोलना चाहूंगा। थैंक यू मैम।
सर बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका। ऑलरेडी हम देख सकते हैं कि दो अलग पर्सपेक्टिव जो हैं उभर के हमारे सामने आ रहे हैं, और ये एक तरह से इट हैज बीन a very paradoxical situation, that how do we preserve cultures and how do we bring in development, and the arguments are that the interventions are not necessarily always very beneficial, though they may provide nutrition, and which is welcome and heartening to see how a new deputy collector is already from the PVTGs, is that how do we involve communities in their own development? That's a very moot question, and maybe if time will permit, I'll talk about later in another important project of the IGNC on Halma, in which how traditional culture resource base has been turned into a mass movement for water conservation and harvesting in Jhabua district, but later about that. And now I would request Professor Patnaik, Vice Chancellor, Utkal University, to kindly give his address and bring all these paradoxes probably into his discourse today. So, Professor Patnaik.
Can you listen me?
Yes, we can. We'd like to see you also, sir.
I have kept my video open.
Yes, we can see you.
You can see.
Welcome, Professor Patnaik. Yes.
Thank you. Can you share my screen so that I can also?
You will have to share your screen, sir, because I don't have your PPT. So you have.
I don't have PPT. Okay, I'll go ahead with that.
I can see you. You're visible to everyone, sir. Your audio and your video is perfect.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. And it's really a great privilege and a great pleasure on my part to be connected with such a prestigious institute of great repute. Respected Member Secretary, Professor Joshi, respected Professor Molly Kausal, the Chief Speaker, Professor Emeritus, Professor Sahai, my esteemed colleague, Professor Joshi, and my esteemed colleague from the administration, Dr. Ranendra Kumarji from the tribal governance. I would like to argue that one of our problems as anthropologists or as any expert in any of the component, one of our problem is that we create categories, and categories create boundaries. And when I say that that this is a PVTG, particularly vulnerable tribal group, my first question would be, in what sense it is different from the other tribal groups? That is what my friend Ranendra ji was trying to address very, very clearly and very well articulated manner. And this is what Professor Roy Burman long ago asked me, that what is it, who is a tribe? Is it because that the government has identified a category as a tribe, or is it because the administration has identified a category as a tribe, or as a PVTG, or some other qualities of existence characterize a tribe as a tribe? And similarly, what is a particularly vulnerable tribal group? In what sense they are different from other tribal group? In the sense of their collective existence in a homogeneous manner, the danger of being extinct, the total population. Professor Sahai has talked about how people have been completely wiped out from Nicobar archipelago, and mountains and islands are uninhabited, but at some point of time humans existed there. How they have not been able to mastery over the technology and therefore remain relatively not so connected with the mainstream, the so-called mainstream culture. Now, in such a question, the point which Professor Sahai raised, that the whole idea of pessimism, that, and this is a question which we have always been listening to from our colleagues and from our professors and from our teachers, and the popular slogan is, you can't have the cake and eat it too. And that is something which need to be understood primarily in terms of having it or not having it. I remember that one of my professors from Delhi University had constructed a new house in a place called Mukteshwar. And in Mukteshwar, it's completely isolated. They are not connected to the outside world, but there is strong internet, there is strong bandwidth, there is strong global network. And when I asked him that, how do you explain this scenario? He said, Somendra, this is a postmodern ashram. And you look at the postmodern ashram, the residence is there, we're closer to nature, the world-class connectivity is there, but there is also some kind of disconnectivity. So when we talk about this pessimism and optimism, I would like to bring my colleagues to the point of universal versus local. Anthropology is known to be a local endeavor. And a local endeavor, therefore, we emphasize on ethnography, we emphasize on participant observation, we emphasize on microcosm, we emphasize on micro-universe, and PVTG suits us very perfectly that this is a microcosm, and microcosm helps us to retain our identity. But I would not like to carry that identity. I don't want to carry an identity that our methods and our techniques are so specific that it cannot transcend the challenges of time. I don't want to buy that argument, and many of my colleagues will not buy that argument, that our method, and that is what long ago we had this debate of isolation, assimilation, and integration approach, and the whole idea of that how tribes have to be connected with the mainstream. So I would like to argue that when we pursue for a development of these PVTGs, we cannot say that there is no assurance for cultural continuity, but we have to discover new kind of continuity, which our friend Mr. Ranendra was talking about, that we don't change absolutely. We change substantially, but at the same time, we don't change in terms of our essence. The essence remains the same. I will tell you very frankly, I was offered a professorship in one of the universities in Australia. I said, my wife is also teaching, and therefore I can come only when the offer is to both of us. And very coincidentally, the offer came to both of us, not in writing. We were discussing in some leisure activities, and a very influential, powerful person offered. And you know what was the consideration why I did not go? That when I pass away, there is no Ganges. When I leave this world, the water of Ganges is not available there. I have my own idiom of staying connected to my roots. I have my own justification of staying in India. I have my own justification to stay connected to the roots. So is the case with PVTGs. They have all their justifications to stay connected to their roots, to stay connected to their culture, to stay connected to their territory. And when you go to the Northeast, and especially in terms of Nagaland, you will find the communities are so intrinsically connected to the territory that the earthy flavor is something which they cherish in their heart. The color of the sky, the fragrance of the soil, they carry within them, and that is what we call as the authenticity of the tribal culture, or the authenticity of so-called PVTG. You look at some of the festivals which showcase the cultural touristic aspects. Some of the activities which belong to a particular PVTG group, like the festival of worshipping the earth among the Bonda, when it is open to the tourist, or when some Naga festival is open to the tourist, the persons, the tribals, they come and perform in the traditional dress, but once it is over, they would pick up their Adidas, they would pick up their BMW, or they would pick up their the powerful vehicles and will go home. They nurture the culture within their persona. They cherish it within their psyche, and that is where the real, I will not use the word preservation, the real enliving of the intangible cultural style is possible. The moment you live in and live the culture in a traditionally desirable way. And that is, for that we require technology to a great extent. And technology can create new kind of spaces. And if technology can create a good space within your own area, look at the post-COVID scenario. Most of these post-COVID scenario, there is a return of the migrants, those who had left their villages. They are coming in and they are entering in. And when they are entering in, there is a new kind of competition for the resources. And this new kind of competition is changing the whole idiom of village solidarity, the whole idiom of village cooperation. And therefore, we have to handle this new space in the villages, in the tribal areas, in the rural areas. And these new spaces are very, very important. And that is the big challenge before us. Many of these rope making, like many of these activities of intangible cultural heritage, which will qualify to be an intangible cultural heritage, they are soon dying. Embroidery, the weaving, the basketry, they are all the whole idea of making it, that knowledge of reproducing it is soon dying. I was doing field work among the Korwa of Chhattisgarh, and also I was doing field work among the Bonda of Odisha. We find that the Korwa, they detect the pulse by calling it as three different categories: Ghud Ghud, Dum Dum, Pung Pung. Now this whole idea of Ghud Ghud, Dum Dum and Pung Pung refer to three different kinds of diseases which cannot be documented either by an Anglo-Saxon language, which cannot be documented by any kind of literature we may produce. So the whole idea of documenting intangible cultural resources require new pedagogy, require new methodology of documenting it. And that is something which we should be aware, that knowledge is not always sentential knowledge. Knowledge is not always capable of expressing through language. We know more than what we can say, and that is the tacit knowledge. That is what Michael Polanyi would say, that tacit knowledge is something which is more than what is being spoken, and that is the real storehouse of intangible cultural resource. That intangible cultural resource has to be tacitly documented, and that has to be documented in a very, very different and very, very innovative manner. Look at some of the intangible cultural resources which is so closely connected to biodiversity. The Chang women in the Indo-Myanmar border, they sing a particular variety of tuning while husking a particular variety of paddy. So one of the Chang women told me that we know 53 such tunes, but we can sing only 21 of them because 21 varieties of paddy are available and others have become extinct. Look at this connection. Don't look at the boundary that biodiversity has nothing to do with aesthetics. The moment we say biodiversity has nothing to do with aesthetics, we miss out that link. And that link is very important. As a student of anthropology, as a student of holistic inquiry, that we study the human existence, the philosophy of human existence, all in its totality. And that is where the approach, the change is needed in terms of dealing with the PVTGs, not necessarily by categorizing them as an administrative category, but by categorizing them as a part of our own societies, part of our own culture, and a part of our own civilization, and how to come up more powerfully. In Odisha, I will come to the last part of my discussion. In Odisha, we have the maximum number of PVTGs. We have 13 PVTGs in Odisha distributed over most of the districts, except few coastal districts. They are found in Mayurbhanj, Baleswar, Malkangiri, Nuapada, Kalahandi, Raigada, everywhere, Birhor, Mankidia, Hilkhadia, Juang, Pauri Bhuiya. And we know that each one of them, they have their own way of living. They have their own kind of resources in terms of intel, all continuing with different varieties. And the government of Odisha has built or has created a special development council, which is very unique in the tribal administration and governance. A special development council where there is a platform where the experts, both the anthropological experts and the administrative experts, they are talking to each other. The officers from Indian Administrative Service are talking to the professors of anthropology, and that is where the newness in governance is bringing out new kind of hope and new kind of ray. And there are annual targets and annual reports submitted to the governor of the state, and for this article, for this Schedule 5 and Schedule 6 categories, and thus we find that this whole idea of primitive, the so-called particularly vulnerable tribal groups require greater attention in terms of a holistic approach where the development should not be regarded as an interference, but development should be regarded as an enabling space. Development should create an enabling space where the cultural inflorescence can take place. The cultural essence can hold roots on the ground. And finally, I would like to conclude by saying that as a microcosmic experts, that we are experts on microcosm, we have forgotten the macrocosm. And there is a need. I agree with Professor Sahai that there is a complete absence of in-depth studies. Maybe we shy away from carrying out the in-depth study, but in-depth studies are first part, the first step of anthropological research. And after having conducted the in-depth study, not necessarily that I will do it myself, my students could do it, my colleagues could do it, my teachers could do it. After we have done the in-depth study, there has to be some mechanism for comparison, generalization, so that we look towards the universal pointers. What are the universal pointers for such a kind of exercise? Look at what I was gaining from Professor Sahai, and with this I would like to conclude that we have lost out we have always looked at the Solava and Mawali in terms of the Trobriand Islanders, the Boyovans, in terms of a ring-like fashion. and look at the Southeast Asian trade with people from Odisha touching the touching the coast of Thailand and then coming down to Indonesia and other areas. And this trade has disappeared. This trade has completely gone to the oblivion. So this trade or Southeast Asian marine trade was not the characteristic features of the so-called isolated communities, but they were connected to a larger landmass and sitting on the soil of Odisha. Now I can imagine that how our ancestors would be going and getting connected to those communities in different places who would be having a some kind of, patron-client relationship. I mean, somebody providing the shawls to the generations after generations. The weaver will provide the shawl to the person who has come for the purchase, who has come for the visit. So it makes sense. It falls into the whole perspective of a larger maritime trade framework within which our smaller universes can be fitted. So we should go beyond the microcosm and try to see how the microcosms, I mean, not going beyond doesn't mean leaving it all together, but going beyond the microcosm, I imply that after having understood these microcosm, we should try to see how they find a place in the larger macrocosm, in the larger civilizational matrix, and therefore we can have more empathy, and this distinction between we and they should be understood primarily in terms of a larger civilizational matrix and larger matrix of nature culture interactions. And we have left that empathy with nature, and nature has been reacting in a variety of manner, and that is evident in terms of various cyclones, climate change, COVID, and other things. And that sensitivity to nature in a indigenous way is the call of Indian civilization. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Patnaik. Thank you bringing in a very, very positive note. And I think you kind of hit the nail on its head. And also in a way you brought all the observations by your previous speakers into, and the possibility that there exists a huge possibility where development in intangible heritage are not necessarily moving in two opposite directions, and how can they be interconnected in terms of holistic idea of the development of the humankind, because you raise a question of categories as well as the notion of the self and the other, which is getting into also the philosophical discourse of what our disciplines have been and how to actually break these boundaries. I thank you absolutely, and I'm now looking forward to Professor P.C. Joshi's address, who's also one of the experts for the PVTGs, and hoping to get more guidance. And we really learned a lot from the discussion that is happening here. And I can see that there are a lot of people raising questions and there are a lot of chats. I assure you that we are recording this and we'll pass it on to the speakers. I'm sure some of are your students, your colleagues, and you can be directly in touch with them to get answers to your various questions that you've been raising here. And now, Professor P.C. Joshi, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Respected Satyanand Joshi ji and Professor Mauli Kausar, my dear colleague, Professor Sahai, Professor Patnaik, and our friend from administration, Ramanendra ji, and Ramanath Pant and others. Well, it is really a great privilege. And before I start, I would like to start from where my colleague, Professor Patnaik, left. The great trade that route from Odisha to Thailand and to Indonesia. In fact, when I went to Indonesia, I was surprised to see the Sambalpuri designs there, and which must have gone from, of course, Odisha. Their Hinduism, I think, is greatly influenced by Odisha. And this all is there in the memory of people, and this is now ritualized. There is a distinct festival where they now have boats going on. So what happens is that all these memories are there in the culture, they are ritualized. Now let me come back to Delhi, because I'm in Delhi and I'm in east part of Delhi. So there are two localities, very popular localities of Delhi. One is, of course, called Patparganj, and the other is called Karkarduma. Now, I always wonder, what is the meaning of Patparganj and what is the meaning of Karkarduma? Are these some words with a meaning or are these sounds? And I, probed into and I found these are not words, these are sounds. And these are sounds which were actually made at the time of mutiny, 1857. And Karkar and Patpad were the sounds of gunfire. And so these names have come from gunfire. Now, this is how, the I would say that the things are preserved, things are documented. Things are not necessarily, and we are talking of, PVTGs, which are, of course, which are oral cultures, which are basically oral cultures. And of course, one of the very important criteria for the so-called PVTGs out of 5 criteria was they have low literacy rate level. So they are basically what in earlier anthropological parlance we used to call as preliterate societies, primarily oral societies. So oral societies have their own way of documenting things. They document in their names. They document in their rituals. They document in their legends. They document in their folklores. And these documentations are there. Now, looking at, like a, devil that was shown by Dr. Sahai, and I was really intrigued to see that he was wearing a cap, hat. Now, why a devil is wearing a hat? Has that got something to do with the memory with the Britishers? Because he was looking like a Britisher with that typical, I think colonial long cap, and they're definitely. Now, you ask people, they may not be knowing, but we can make 2 + 2 = 3. Now, what I would like to say here, as far as the PVTCs are concerned, that we must accept that there has been historical wrong with these people, with all of them, and this must be acknowledged by us. This must be acknowledged by the civilization. This must be acknowledged by so-called developed society, so-called like mainstream society, that there has been historical wrong. Now, let's talk about Great Andamanis. There is nothing like Great Andamanis. They are 20, 30 different ethnic groups who were actually decimated, there was a genocide with them. And now these people who are 30, 40 odd people, they are the remaining people out of these 20, 30 different ethnic groups. Now let's go to Jarawas. Now, who are these Jarawas? Well, Jarawa is a name given by us to them. They call themselves as Ang. So that is their name. Now we are very sensitive to the names, but all the so-called PVTGs, their names are derogatory names given by outside. Asur. Asur. What is Asur? What is Birhor? Birhor is a jungly, man from forest. I think these are Mankadiya, people eating monkeys. Now these are the names given by outsiders. They are derogatory names given to them. And the first thing that we must, if we really want to do something right with them, we must ask what their proper name is. Now they also start calling themselves with those names. Bega is a term given to mendicants. Bega is a term which is used for people who are doing all kinds of this ojagiri. There is a community which is called Bega. So these are what I'm trying to say. You have Ban Rawat, in Kumaon you have people, the Rawat of the forest. So generally we are giving them derogatory name. But Marcel Salin has called these people as the original affluent societies. These are the original affluent societies. These were the societies which were autonomous. These were the societies which were independent. These were the societies which were affluent. Now, I remember our erstwhile finance minister, Yashwant Sinha, going to meet a Birhor chief, and this came in television, and I was really intrigued. I was looking at it. Now he was introduced to the Birhor chief as the chief of India, and the Birhor chief said, "Okay, you are the chief of India. I am the chief of Birhor," and they were talking at par with each other. So this is what they have, that sense of dignity. Most of the so-called PVTs call themselves as kings. They do not call themselves as dependent. They do not call themselves as pre-agricultural. They do not call themselves as subsistence level economy. And what we are calling them? We are calling them groups. We are just calling them groups. That is aggregate of people. I don't think calling them group, even PVTG, we are calling them groups. They are vibrant cultures. They are cultures which have lived with nature for a very, very long time. We are talking about their intangible heritage. They are the cultures with intangible heritage. They are the cultures which can teach us a lot in terms of sustainable practices, sustainable development. Now that we are facing this COVID crisis, now that we are facing all this kind of climate change situations, now that we are facing with all kinds of disasters, we are now coming back to them. We are coming back to them to relearn from the same PVTCs about how must we live. And I think one of the agenda of the agency is to discover how best to live so that we might sustain ourselves for tomorrow. Now, we all must remember that when the tsunami came, 2004 tsunami came, well, it was in the newspapers, nothing happened to the indigenous communities of Andaman Nicobar. Now, they had some kind of a knowledge about it. They had some kind of indigenous knowledge, and therefore, they went to the safe places, which was again traditionally known to them, which was part of their cultural memory. But how do we behave as the civilized society in Tamil Nadu? When the sea started receding, we went near the seashore to see what is happening. And suddenly the surge came and a lot of people died. So what I'm trying to say is that their intangible heritage is very, very valuable. Now, one of the very important criteria of PVTC is that they are forest dependent communities. In other words, they have immense traditional knowledge. They have immense indigenous knowledge with respect to the forest, with respect to the plants, and also with respect to the animals. Let us not forget that in the modern society, human-animal conflict is a very, very serious problem. And in one of my articles, which was published in Social Change, I have argued how these traditional societies were making some kind of a symbiotic balance by releasing resources to the forest, by releasing domestic resources to the forest, or by offering animals to the god and then leaving them in the forest so that their own domestic animals are saved. So these kind of practices were there, and these kind of practices were making sure that there is no human-animal conflict. Now, human-animal conflict is increasing day by day, and we are having wildlife-related mechanisms to solve these human-animal problems. But we had time-tested, traditional, and we can learn from these people how do we behave with the animals. Now, one of the very important thing that we must learn from these so-called PVTGs is that they believe in some kind of a spiritual relations with the forest and with the resources of the forest. Of course, they don't call them resources for them. They are living things. They are not resources to be exploited. They are living things with whom they have spiritual relations, and they know that their existence depends on the existence of the others. Now, this kind of a feeling that is ingrained in all indigenous cultures, all PVTG cultures, need to be studied, need to be understood. And I think some of it needed to be applied by us because we have, I think now a pause has come because of COVID-19. Otherwise, we were not looking back. We were exploiting nature like anything. We were actually going for our own annihilation. And now I think there is a pause because of the COVID-19 now we are trying to understand that there is our dependence is on the nature and natural resources also. So a lot can be learned. Now what has happened? In the course of years, most of these people have been dispossessed from their resources. Most of these people have been, like Sahai Saab said, in many places there are extremism and they have become very, very inaccessible to us. But in many places they have not. Now, once, N.K. Rustamji, who was an administrator of erstwhile Northeast Frontier Agency, and he was an administrator chosen by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru to administer, to guide them administration in the NEFA. He met Margaret Mead, and he said that these so-called tribal communities are losing their culture, and we may lose them, and one day we may not have anything there. So I think Margaret Mead told him, and I agree with her, is that cultures do not go away just like that. It is like, in the winters you may not see the grass, but then when the water comes, the grass will spring back. So cultures are like that. And we have a very good example of Israel, which has actually made a dead language, Hebrew language, a very, very vibrant language. So I think this cultural heritage, even of this so-called PVTCs, is not going to be lost. It can come. It will come because it is preserved, not in books which can be burnt and then we have no trace. These are ingrained in the minds of people. These are ingrained in the soul of people, in the spirits of people. And therefore, like the lost grass that we have in the desert, and with the water it will spring back, we will be able to restore it. And so therefore, we should not worry. Now I come to a very important point that you raised, Professor Moli, and that is about what is going to the future of fieldwork, what is going to the future of studying culture, what is going to the future of ethnography. I think in my department of anthropology, we have been very, very seriously talking of this. Of course, we had the similar situation in World War II, and Professor Sahai, I'm glad that he talked about culture from a distance. And we had, in fact, Ruth Benedict writing Crescent and Sword on trying to give us an idea about the Japanese culture to the same methodology. But now I think things are much more difficult. And of course, what my colleagues have been saying is that we have to now come up with things like smart ethnography. What is smart ethnography? Ethnography based on smartphone. So smartphone-based ethnography. This is going to be, now smartphones are actually very powerful tool that we have discovered. Smartphones are very powerful tools because in a smartphone and things like WhatsApp, if you use it, in a smartphone, we can not only talk to people, we can also see them. So we can be virtually there. Suppose there is a smartphone at some place, and now smartphone is spreading very, very fast. It's not that the PVTGs would not have a smartphone or they do not have a smartphone. They would also be having now. A village where there was no electricity, when I did my doctoral research, having a smartphone, and every day I can talk to them and they can show me what is happening around them. So I am almost visiting them. Earlier it used to take 21 days to go reach that village. Now I am visiting them as if I am there. So these possibilities of new tools that we have, we'll have to incorporate these tools into our, like online education. We are incorporating online education in Delhi University. Online examinations, we are incorporating them. So we are trying to adjust now to the new situation. Similarly, I think in fieldwork also, we will have to adjust to this situation. There need not be, okay, of course, if we go there and if we physically experience something is, of course, very, very different. My physical presence in your office and talking to you is, of course, different in terms of an experience than I'm talking to you on virtual platform, of course. But I think I'm able to collect my ethnographic information. 85% I can collect just by being virtually there. So there may be some downfall as well as experience of ethnography is concerned, but that downfall would, to my mind, would be only 15-20%, not more. And I think we can do away with hardships of taking so many equipments there. We can do away with the hardship of, making arrangement of living. So we must try to, like Prime Minister Modi said, we must try to see opportunity in the new situations. So although there are constraints, but there are opportunities, and these opportunities should be made use of by us. And I think we must try to do ethnography from distance, but not like the Second World War, but like the virtual ethnography with a smart method. So this is what I would say, and I would like to maybe go ahead also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this very heartening and very, very encouraging address that also kind of, I think, leads us towards how we can carry forward the PVTG project forward. I think so now from visual anthropology to virtual ethnography, I think this is something that's going to be talked about a lot now, sir, that you have kind of pinpointed it out. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And at the same time, I think what was very important and relevant, which came through all the discussions that we've had, is that intangible is not just dancing, music, but it is that entire wisdom tradition, the symbiosis that is being created with nature and the animal kingdom, and how intelligently and wisely the communities, I would, taking clue from Professor Patnaik, I'm not going to use words PVTGs or tribal, but how communities have actually interacted so responsibly with their natural resource basin, and then coming back to the governors and to Narendra Kumarji, with how can we interweb it all together. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful talk. And I would now request Professor Sachidanand Joshi, today's chair, to kindly enlighten us with his address. Behind this entire program is, of course, his vision and his concept and his guidance. And also, as I said, the entire PVTG would not have been happening had he not insisted and emphasized its importance. So maybe in your talk, you would like to talk a bit about Halma experiment as well, because it is so important. And that's going to be our next webinar also. So, sir, welcome and a great thank you. And we eagerly now look forward to your address. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Molly Kaushal ji, and thank you, Professor P.C. Joshi sir, Professor Patnaik sir, Shri Ramendra Kumarji, who is the Director of Tribal Research Institute, and Dr. Vijay Sahai ji. All are eminent scholars in their own respect and regard. And this is the beauty of this webinar, that we had a variety of thoughts which are not contradicting, but which are contributing to each other. They are actually complementing to each other. That is the best way of looking at it, and that is the main purpose of this webinar. It is not to sort of alienate or not to reject any idea, but to welcome all the ideas, because the matter on which we are discussing is really of immense importance and consequence. It is not preserving the heritage of a particular tribe or a community or a society, but it is also to understand the cultural nuances of a particular community and the advantages of that particular community. We must have realized during this situation of pandemic how our old traditions and customs, which were taught to us by our ancestors, our elders in the family, how all of them were revived during the course of pandemic, and how we realize their importance. So it is not only related to a particular tribe or people residing in forest or residing at mountains, even people residing on plains, people like us who have been residing in even urban areas, who forgot our traditional customs and traditions, sort of realized the importance of all those, and then we recollected all those things. So in today's situation, when the entire philosophy to look at the life has changed, or it is changing gradually, we must also realize the importance of various customs and traditions and rituals and cultures, which, as Professor Molly Kaushalji has rightly said, it is not only the songs and dance, but it is also the style of living. The philosophy of looking towards life is of all of our immense importance. Perhaps this must be the first time in all of us memory that we were in cages and birds were free. I mean, we have never experienced this situation, and people residing in the forest they have always been telling us, give freedom to all those who are residing in the forest. We never realized, but see how nature has really it has done its own charisma, and nature has put all of us in cages only to make us feel how anyone would feel if you curb anyone's freedom and put the creature in the cages. So that is what our tribes have been telling us. They know, they have been living with nature for ages together, years together. I'll give you only an example, few example, which I'm very fond of saying that किसी भी ट्राइब में जंगल से लकड़ी काटना नहीं कहा जाता. They will never say कि हम जंगल से लकड़ी काट कर ला रहे हैं. They will always say हम वहां से लकड़ी चुन के ला रहे हैं. There is a difference between काटना and चुनना. चुनना are those लकड़ी, those wood that has been dropped by the tree. पेड़ से जो गिर गया है, सूख के गिर गया है, किसी और कारण से गिर गया है, कोई भी वनवासी काट के नहीं लाएंगे, वो चुन के लाते हैं. It is a difference. पानी को कैसे रोकना. पानी में भी हमारे यहाँ जो टर्म है, हम पानी को वेस्ट करते हैं, बकेट ऑफ वाटर. हम लोग कार धोने के लिए भी पानी का इस्तेमाल फव्वारे लगा के करते हैं. Those people who have abundance of natural resources still know how to preserve that. पानी की एक एक बूंद को कैसे बचा के रखना, पानी की एक एक बूंद को कैसे संरक्षित करना. These are the things which we must also learn. I was in the state of Chhattisgarh for 10 years, and I had chance to visit to some of the remotest of the remote area of Chhattisgarh, where PVTG tribes like Abuj Madia were there. When Renendra ji was telling about somebody qualifying for deputy collector and becoming deputy collector, is a welcome news for all of us. In fact, when I was there, I had a chance to meet the boy who qualified for the medical exam and would have been the first Abuj Madia to become a doctor. I mean, can you understand the growth and how with the struggle and how with their persistence to live with nature, their persistence to live with their customs and traditions and their own culture, still they are trying to grow in under difficult circumstances. Here we are sitting in a metropolitan city who have access to all kind of infrastructure and facility, enjoying everything, and still we are sort of blaming, abhi network nahi aata hai, abhi pankha nahi chalta hai, abhi AC nahi chalta, and try to understand the challenges through which they live, and still they live up to the expectation of life. हम आपसे ये जो जीवन जीने की जो शैली है, जीवन जीने की जो कला है, जीवन जीने का जो चिंतन है, उसको समझने और सोचने की जरूरत है. प्रिजर्व करने की जरूरत नहीं, उसको सीखने की जरूरत है. And that is why everything which is required to be documented should have been documented and given to the next generation to understand. Each and every community, each and every society which is surviving in difficult circumstances, how they have overcome to their challenges of life is really a motivating example for today's scenario. At least that should be taken into consideration for all of us who are relatively better placed as far as infrastructure is concerned. I will also give another example. I don't remember, शायद पटनायक साहब ने कहा था या कि वो जो गाने हैं भूल गए, क्योंकि धान की वैरायटी हमारे पास अगर 53 वैरायटीज धान की होती तो हमारे पास 53 किस्म के गाने होते जो हम गाते. Just see, I still remember, I belong to Maharashtra. Only day before yesterday, I was telling to somebody कि वो जो आटा पीसते हैं चक्की पर, उसको जाता बोलते हैं महाराष्ट्र में, जाता. और जाता जो है उसके गाने हुआ करते थे. कि वो जब आप चक्की पीसेंगे तो चक्की पीसने के साथ साथ कौन कौन से गाने किस किस अवसर पर गाए जाएंगे. They had all imbibed during the process of जो जो गेहूं पीस रहे हैं उस प्रोसेस के साथ वो imbibed थे. That was the beauty of our culture. हमेशा हमारी जो परेशानी ये रही है कि हमने कल्चर को जिंदगी से अलग करके देखने की कोशिश की है और ऐसा सोचा है कि कल्चर कोई एक ऐसी कोई जमीनी चीज है जिसको हम बैग में भरकर या थैले में भरकर एक जगह से दूसरी जगह ले जा सकते हैं. मुझे हमेशा इस बात का दुख होता है और इसीलिए कई बार मुझे लगता है कि शायद पूरी के पूरी प्रोसेस में हमने कल्चर के मर्म को, द बेसिक एसेंस ऑफ कल्चर वी डिड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड, वी कुड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड. India is blessed with 705 tribes. शायद पूरे विश्व में ऐसा ट्राइबल कनेक्ट किसी देश के पास नहीं होगा. That constitutes almost 8.6% of our population. ये कितनी बड़ी वेल्थ है हमारे पास नॉलेज की. ये इसलिए नॉलेज की वेल्थ है क्योंकि बिकॉज ईच ट्राइब हैज इट्स ओन स्पेशलिटी, own style of thinking, own style of looking at the life, which is really a treasure for the entire study of anthropology. इतना बड़ा हमारे पास भारत के पास ट्रेजर है. आउट ऑफ देम 75 have been notified as PVTGs. ये जो PVTG का कॉन्सेप्ट है, रविंद्र कुमार जी क्योंकि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में मेरे साथी शायद ज्यादा इसको बेहतर अच्छी तरह से बताएंगे कि पहले हमने इसको प्रिमिटिव ट्राइब का 2006 में हमने उनको PVTG कहना शुरू कर दिया. पर्टिकुलरली वल्नरेबल ट्राइबल ग्रुप्स ऐसा कहना शुरू कर दिया. ये वल्नरेबिलिटी जो आई है वो कहाँ से आई है? वल्नरेबिलिटी शायद हम लोगों के कारण से आ गई कि हमने जो डेवलपमेंट की प्रोसेस की, हमने जो हमारे शहर को एक्सटेंड किया और गांव को लीलना शुरू किया, जंगल को लीलना शुरू किया, पहाड़ को लीलना शुरू किया, तब शायद कहीं ना कहीं ऐसा खतरा हुआ कि वो लोग अपने आप को कहीं समझने लगे कि उनको अपना जो बेसिक नेचर है, जो बेसिक कल्चर है, उसको कहीं ना कहीं संरक्षित करने की दिक्कत आनी पड़ी. इसके बावजूद वो जो चुनौतियां, द चैलेंजेस व्हिच दे हैव फेस्ड, दे हैव वेरी ब्रेवली फेस्ड दोस चैलेंजेस, जिसको हमको स्वीकार करना चाहिए. इसलिए एक स्टेज तो आज आगे कि हम ही वल्नरेबल हो रहे हैं. जस्ट लुक एट दिस. एक छोटा सा आपके सामने वायरस आता है, देन एंटायर ह्यूमन काइंड इज अंडर वल्नरेबिलिटी. तो आप ये समझिए कि हमने कितना बड़ा नुकसान उस समय किया उन ट्राइब्स का वल्नरेबल बनाकर. सो दे आर नॉट वल्नरेबल, एक्चुअली तो वी आर वल्नरेबल. हमको भी समझना चाहिए कि इस तरह से लिविंग, दे हैव शोन अस हाउ टू लिव विद नेचर, दे हैव शोन अस हाउ टू लिव ग्रेसफुली, हाउ टू रिस्पेक्ट ईच एंड एवरी लिविंग और नॉन लिविंग स्पीसीज जो नेचर ने क्रिएट किया है. एंड दैट इज व्हाई unless we understand the real nuances, real essence of biodiversity, हम जब बहुत कंफ्यूज करते हैं कि बायोडाइवर्सिटी ही नहीं समझते. हमको लगता है कि पेड़ लगाने से पर्यावरण की सुरक्षा हो गई. आई थिंक यू वुड काइंडली पार्डन मी फॉर स्पीकिंग दोज हार्श वर्ड्स. पेड़ लगाने से कोई पर्यावरण की सुरक्षा नहीं होती, क्योंकि अनलेस आप पूरी की पूरी बायोडाइवर्सिटी होना, स्पीसीज, स्मॉलेस्ट ऑफ द स्मॉलेस्ट ऑब्जेक्ट, सबका अगर ख्याल नहीं रखते तो वो कोई पर्यावरण की रक्षा नहीं होती. हमको लगता है 1 लाख 2 लाख 5 लाख पेड़ लगाने से वो रिचुअल हो सकता है, वो सरकारी रिचुअल हो सकता है, वो गैर सरकारी रिचुअल हो सकता है, वो हमारी आत्मा की शांति हो सकती है. पर उस छोटी छोटी लता का, छोटी छोटी घास का, तृण का, तिनके का, इन सबका जब तक महत्व हमें नहीं समझ में आएगा तब तक हम सच में उस पर्यावरण को नहीं समझ पाएंगे. वो हमारे जो वनवासी बंधु हैं, जो अलग अलग जगह पे रहते हैं, या पहाड़ पर जो रहते हैं, या जो नदी के किनारे रहते हैं, या जो समुद्र के किनारे रहते हैं, जो तटीय क्षेत्र में रहते हैं, जो डिफिकल्ट सर्कमस्टांसेस में अपने जीवन को चलाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, लेकिन साथ में नेचर का उतना ही सम्मान करते हैं, उनसे ये सब सीखने की जरूरत है. तो इसलिए ये जो डिस्कशन, आज की जो पैनल डिस्कशन है, जिसमें हमारे चारों विद्वान, ऑल ऑफ देम, आई मस्ट कांग्रेचुलेट ऑल ऑफ देम. I have never seen such a variety of thoughts. All are enlightened people. All are authority in their own respect and regard, and all of them have very nicely elaborated different aspects. I could see more than 500 participants joining this webinar. This must have been a very nice intellectual feast for all of them. क्योंकि ये जब समझना है, and it's not only the matter of understanding. It's also a matter of realizing. हमारे अंदर if we internally realize the whole nuance, that would definitely help us. And I must also point it out, जो जोशी साहब ने कहा था कि कैसे हमने नाम, ये नाम हमारी तरफ से हमने कैसे दे दिए, जैसे किसी को असुर कह देना या किसी को इस तरह से हमने कैसे ये नाम दे दिए, एटलीस्ट उसको भी फिर से कहीं ना कहीं देखने की जरूरत है कि हाउ दीज नेम्स हैव बीन coined and how we can change these name or how we can find out the roots of those name. हो सकता है कोई अपभ्रंश हो कई वर्षों से जो अपभ्रंश है, क्योंकि एक दफे ये भी हुआ अनफॉर्चुनेटली, एंड दैट इज द सैडेस्ट पार्ट विद आवर कंट्री, कि ये जो कुछ साल की जो गुलामी हमारे पास रही है, जो कॉलोनियल रूल भारत में रहा है, उस कॉलोनियल रूल ने कुछ जो बातें की, उसमें से ये जो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन था, और इस डॉक्यूमेंटेशन में उनको जो चीज जैसी समझ में आई उन्होंने वैसी डॉक्यूमेंट कर दी। अनफॉर्चुनेटली आजादी के बाद हमको जो चीज टॉप प्रायोरिटी में लेनी चाहिए थी वो थी इन सब का सही तरह से डॉक्यूमेंटेशन होता। नॉट ओनली दीज PVTGs बट ऑल 705 ट्राइब्स, इनका अगर हम बहुत सही तरीके से डॉक्यूमेंटेशन करते, इनकी कस्टम्स, ट्रेडिशंस, रिचुअल्स, कल्चर, तो शायद दृश्य कुछ और अलग होता। पर हमको लगा कि अभी दूसरी प्रायोरिटीज में हम चले गए और इसका डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं हुआ, तो बहुत सारी चीजें जो कॉलोनियल लेगेसी से चली आई, वो कॉलोनियल लेगेसी से ही आज भी चली जा रही है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये जो शास्त्र है जिस पर ज्यादा लोगों को शायद जाने की जरूरत थी, we would have appreciated if more young people would have come to the field of to the study of anthropology, or these science would have helped immensely to really bring Indian perspective to the whole thing. Today the need is to bring Indian perspective to the whole discourse, to the whole narrative, where we are suffering. We are really suffering on this account. We have to bring Indian narrative. I would urge to the esteemed scholars who are here on the panel, and all the scholars who are here as attendees, and as participants. I would consider them as participants. That we should focus on building up our own narratives for this tribal discourse, for this tribal studies, for anthropological studies. अगर वो नैरेटिव हमारा आएगा तो हमको सच में समझ में आएगा कि किस चीज को हमको किस पर्सपेक्टिव में कहाँ कैसे रखना है। और जिस दिन हमने उस चीज को उस पर्सपेक्टिव में रख दिया, मुझे लगता है कि हमारी बहुत सारी जो हमारे अंदर ही जो व्याधियां हैं, हमारे अंदर ही जो मिसकंसेप्शंस ऑफ द होल थिंग है, वो कहीं ना कहीं दूर हो जाएगा। और इसीलिए हमको लगता है कि ये जो विकास की जो अवधारणा है, जो डेवलपमेंट की प्रोसेस है, कई बार सड़क बनना, बिल्डिंग बनना, पुल बनना, बिजली आना, टेलीफोन आ जाना, मोबाइल का नेटवर्क आ जाना, हम गलती से इसी को विकास समझ लेते हैं। हम ये भूल जाते हैं कि इससे कहीं ज्यादा विकास की जो अवधारणा है, इससे ज्यादा कहीं विकसित होने की, इससे ज्यादा कहीं शास्त्रीय होने की, इससे ज्यादा कहीं वैज्ञानिक होने की जो अवधारणा है, वो वर्षों पहले से हमारे ये वनवासी बंधु बांधव प्रैक्टिस कर रहे थे। अगर आप कई उनकी ट्रेडिशंस, कस्टम्स और रिचुअल्स देखें, अभी मेरे पास इतना समय नहीं है कि उनको एलाबोरेट करूं, लेकिन ऐसी हैं, वो इतनी साइंटिफिक हैं कि आपको लगता है कि ये इन्होंने कैसे सोच लिया, हम तो अभी तक इस बात को नहीं सोच पाए हैं। तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि विकसित होने की अवधारणा को और विकास की अवधारणा को भी एक बार फिर से नए सिरे से कहीं ना कहीं हमें सोचना पड़ेगा। हमारा दृष्टिकोण उस हिसाब से कहीं ना कहीं शार्पन होना पड़ेगा। हम कोशिश करें कि हमारा विकास जो है वो आदमखोर ना हो जाए, यानी हम मानवता को, ह्यूमन लाइफ को ही कहीं हमारा विकास न लीलने लग जाए, इसके बारे में हमें सोचना पड़ेगा। अभी जब आपने देखा कि जब हमारे कुछ मजदूर भाइयों का पलायन गांव की तरफ हुआ और एक पूरा का पूरा समाज जो है उसके कारण व्यथित हुआ, हमने देखा कि हमने किस तरह से विकास के नाम पर हमारे अपने ही कल तक जो कलाकार थे उसको मजदूर बना के हमने गांव से शहर में ले आए। आज न वो कलाकार बचा न वो मजदूर बचा, क्योंकि वो आर्टिजन था। हमारे लिए गांव में रहते थे तो कलाकृतियों का निर्माण करते थे, शहर आए तो उन्होंने अपना हुनर भी खो दिया, कौशल भी खो दिया, हमने उनको मजदूर बनाया। और आज हम हमारी मजबूरी के कारण उनकी मदद, उनकी सहायता नहीं कर पाते। तो ये विकास कहीं ना कहीं हमें आदमखोर न बना दे, इसके लिए भी हमें सोचना है। विकास हमें कहीं जंगलखोर न बना दे, ये भी हमें सोचना है कि हम जंगल ही न लील जाएं। जो फॉरेस्ट है, फॉरेस्ट हम सब के लिए कितना बड़ा सुरक्षा का कवच है। हमारी जो वनाच्छादित भूमि है, द फॉरेस्ट रिजर्व इन इंडिया, द एंटायर थिंग, एंड इंडिया हैज बीन ब्लेस्ड with one of the richest forest reserves, और हम अगर उसको लीलते चले जाएंगे विकास के पीछे, तो शायद हमारे बाद की जो पीढ़ी है वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ हमें इस बात के लिए दोष देगी और कोसेगी। इस बार प्रकृति ने हमको चेता दिया है, भले ही किसी वायरस के बहाने से क्यों न हो, हमें प्रकृति ने चेता दिया है कि हमें उस विकास को भी सोचना होगा। और तीसरी बड़ी बात कि विकास कहीं न कहीं ज़मीन खोर ना हो जाए, ज़मीन को ना लीलने लग जाए। हर एक की अपनी ज़मीन है, हर एक व्यक्ति को उसकी ज़मीन का हक है। उस ज़मीन को देखे, उस ज़मीन के साथ साथ अपना कैसा संबंध है, जो हम पंच तत्व की बात कहते हैं भारतीय अवधारणा में, उस पंच तत्व के साथ मेरा समन्वय कैसा है, उस पंच तत्व के साथ मेरा संबंध कैसा है, उसको भी देखने की ज़रूरत है। और जो पंचज की अवधारणा कुछ समय पहले आई थी, उस पंचज को भी समझने की ज़रूरत है। तो इन सब चीज़ों का जब हम एक तरह से हमारे जीवन में समन्वय करके आगे बढ़ेंगे, तब मुझे लगता है कि जो आज की बहस है, जिसमें हम किसी की जैसे पटनायक साहब ने शुरू में कहा कि हम यूनिवर्सल वर्सेस ग्लोबल की बात कर रहे हैं क्या? तो यूनिवर्सल वर्सेस ग्लोबल के इश्यूज़ को भी हम बात करेंगे और हम कहीं किसी को कैटेगराइज़ नहीं कर रहे हैं, कहीं हम बाउंड्रीज़ नहीं बना रहे हैं। हमको सारी बाउंड्रीज़ को खोलना है, हमको सबको डीकैटेगराइज़ करना है, हमको सबको मानवता, सभ्यता के साथ मिलाना है और एक-दूसरे की जीवन शैली के साथ सम्मान का भाव, एक-दूसरे की जीवन शैली के बाद आदर का भाव और एक-दूसरे के जीवन के प्रति, एक-दूसरे के प्रति आस्था का भाव, इन सब चीज़ों का जब तक समन्वय नहीं होगा, ऐसे किसी शोध का, ऐसी किसी बहस का कोई सकारात्मक समाधान नहीं निकलेगा। तो मुझे लगता है मेरी थोड़ी-सी ऊबड़-खाबड़ सी बातें ज़रूर रही होंगी, क्योंकि मैं किताब से नहीं, मैं भावना से बोलता हूँ और मैं दिल से बोलने का प्रयास करता हूँ और इसलिए मुझे लगा कि मेरी पीड़ा, मेरी अभिव्यक्ति इस महत्वपूर्ण पैनल तक, I mean, all these learned scholars, I mean, if I could reach out to them in any manner, I would feel myself privileged to be here. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to express myself. Thank you.
थैंक यू सो मच सर, वी ऑल स्टैंड वाइजर। और मुझे लगता है कि एक तरह से ये सिर्फ समिंग अप ही नहीं हुई, बट एक नई दिशा में सोचने का प्रयास जो IGNC कर सकता है अपनी ट्राइबल स्टडीज को लेके। कैटेगराइजेशंस की बात करते हुए जब आपने पंच तत्व की बात की और जब आपने नेचर के साथ सिम्बियोसिस की बात की, तो वो सारे के सारे एक तो कॉन्टेम्प्ररी मुद्दे तो बनते ही बनते हैं, पर साथ में हम देखते हैं कि ये जो दूसरी कैटेगरी थी कि ये क्लासिकल है, ये वैदिक है, ये वो है जहां आप बात कर रहे हैं कि लकड़ी चुन के लाने की बात है, लकड़ी काटने की बात नहीं है। तो ये पूरा का पूरा डिस्कोर्स जो है वो कैसे परवेसिव है और किस तरह से कॉलोनियल पैरामीटर्स और फ्रेमवर्क्स के अंदर हमने अपने उस पूरे पर्सपेक्टिव और एक वो डिस्कोर्स जो पूरे जम्बूद्वीप अगर यूज करें शब्द को जोड़ता था, वो पूरा मानव के रिश्ते को, नेचर और उसकी डिपेंडेंस को एक्सेप्ट और रिस्पेक्ट करते हुए जो आगे बढ़ता था। शायद जरूरत है कि आज हमारी गवर्नेंस और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन और हमारी स्टडीज के बीच में वो होलिस्टिक अप्रोच जिसका जिक्र आपने किया, पटनायक जी ने किया, जोशी जी ने किया, सहाय जी ने किया और अनिंद्र तो बैठे हैं वहां पर कि उनको ये सब गवर्न करना ही करना है, उसमें गवर्नेंस में और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में लेके आना है। मुझे लगता है कि ये बहुत ही एक थॉट प्रोवोकिंग आज हमारी डिस्कशंस और हमारे एड्रेसेस हुए हैं, जिसके लिए मैं आप सबका हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ, अभिनंदन करती हूँ। आई हैव लर्नड अ लॉट। और अब आप समझ गए होंगे कि मैंने शुरू में कहा था कि ये पूरा ट्राइबल और PVTG जो है वो विजन कहाँ से आ रहा है, वो री एम्फेसिस कहाँ से आ रहा है। अभी हलमा के बारे में बताया नहीं जोशी सर ने, नहीं तो आपको सुन के उसके बारे में एज एंथ्रोपोलॉजिस्ट, एज एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर्स एक नई दिशा पूरी की पूरी खुलती। पर वो शायद नेक्स्ट प्लेटफॉर्म पे सर उसके बारे में बात करेंगे और चाहेंगे कि आप लोग उससे जुड़े ताकि इस चर्चा को और आगे लेके जा सके। और अपनी यूनिवर्सिटीज में सब प्रोफेसर्स बैठे हैं जो इनफैक्ट सर इनमें से कोई भी आर्म चेयर प्रोफेसर नहीं है, सबने जाके फील्ड में संघर्ष किए और उसके बाद जो कुछ कहा और जो कुछ लिखा है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप सबका। पर सिर्फ पैनलिस्ट ही नहीं, मैं अपने और कलीग्स और पूरी टीम का इस प्लेटफॉर्म के माध्यम से जो है आभार व्यक्त करना चाहूंगी डॉक्टर रमाकर पंत जो मेरे कलीग हैं, श्री अभय मिश्रा, उसके बाद हमारे प्रकाश त्रिपाठी जो आप लोगों के साथ तीनों जो है बार बार कांटेक्ट में रहे इस पूरे आयोजन को इसके मुकाम तक पहुंचाने के लिए, और मेरी पूरी की पूरी टेक्निकल टीम जो इसके साथ जुड़ी, और डिजिटल इंडिया की प्रिया जी जो हमारे साथ इस जर्नी, वर्चुअल जर्नी सर, सो वर्चुअल एथनोग्राफी एंड वर्चुअल डिसेमिनेशन जो रूप ले रही है उसमें वो एक हमारा बहुत ही सशक्त हाथ है। मैं आप सभी लोगों का हृदय से एक बार फिर अभिनंदन करती हूँ, आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ और चाहती हूँ कि आप बार बार हमसे जुड़े रहें, चाहे वो वर्चुअल मीडियम और माध्यम ही क्यों ना हो। Thank you very much. And all the participants, all the scholars, colleagues, students in the audience, I think you have all today benefited a lot from these very, very senior scholars, senior professors in the field. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, sir.